Welcome back, guys. In the last session, we have seen different disk scheduling algorithms. These are the algorithm we already discussed. First come, first serve, FCFS, where based on the list it has been served according to the occurrence of the queue as your request has been arrived. Based on that, it has been served. Coming to SSTF, we'll calculate shortest seek time. Then based on that, the IO request has been scheduled. So SSTF, so first 50 starts from 53, then 65, 67, that is nearest one. From 53, 65 is the nearest. From 65, 67 is the nearest. So that's how it works, SSTF works. Coming to scan algorithm is also called as elevator algorithm or staircase algorithm. So we'll move towards the other end. So while moving other end, we'll serve all those whichever your request come in that particular site, 37 and 14 according to this particular example. Then we'll take a U-turn after reaching the end point. End point is initial point, that is 0. Then we'll take a U-turn. In reverse, we'll serve all those whoever comes in that particular site from left to right, and we'll take U-turn again while after reaching the tail end, that is 199 on the other end. That is how scan algorithm works. C-scan is a little bit advancement with the scan algorithm. With respect to C-scan, we'll serve all those IO request moving from initial point, that is 53, towards the other end, and while returning we won't serve anything and we'll come back to initial point 0. Then we'll take a U-turn, then we'll take a turn and we'll serve again. That is C-scan. And coming to the last, C-look, it is a combination of C-scan and the algorithm, look algorithm, so in which we may take a U-turn in the last particular position. Again, it is follow the similar steps. Starts from 53, so it will move towards the other end. It will serve all those whichever comes in that particular line from left to right. Then the last request is 183. I will request at 183. So once 183 is served, then it will take a U-turn. So while returning, it won't serve any of the request, and the 14 has been served. It won't go to 0th position or initial state. Directly it will take, it serves, or it will serve, it will schedule the 14 your request, and then will take the U-turn and moves to the 37th position. This is how C-look works. So these are the algorithms we already saw. So now how we can select this, how we can select the best out of these 5 algorithms. Select a disk scheduling algorithm. So one of the major tasks, so based on our usage, our in the sense with respect to if a machine is concerned, the manufacturer. So in general, SSTF is common. So it will have a natural appeal, saying that shortest seek time can be served first. Whoever asks for a very less time to look after their contents, so SSTF, it has been served first. So shortest seek time served first. Then we have scan and C-scan. So it will perform better for systems which has heavy load on the disk. Scan and C-scan. For example, if you say, for example, you are maintaining 1 TB of hard disk, say you have 1 lakh of your Word file as an example, okay? So in that case, the searching or tracing out any particular file using this scan and C-scan can be performed better when you have number of files where you have heavy load in that disk, so that you can have less starvation. That means less waiting period. But again, we have some conditions. Performance, how to calculate performance? Again, based on the number of types of request, number of files. Types of request, in the sense, based on read, write, execute, and based on the number of files that we have in that particular disk. So based on these two criteria, performance has been decided. So now request for a disk service. So how we can provide a request? So this is again based on or influenced by the file allocation method. So file allocation method, we know something like static and dynamic. In general, if you say static, in the sense, while writing the program itself, we'll allocate the space. We know whichever the part we wanted to access. That is static. Dynamic, during runtime. So whenever there is a need, we may raise a request. So that is request for a disk service. So that is decided over by the file allocation method in that particular situation. And along with that, we will consult metadata. Metadata is nothing but description about the data. So based on the content, whatever the content we have in the disk, so that is available in metadata. So what are the, whoever the author, whether you have the permission, when he wrote, when he updated, so all those. So based on that also it has been influenced. And the disk scheduling algorithm can be written as a separate module of the OS. Why? Because it should allow to replace with the different algorithm if there is a need, if there is a necessary. For example, out of these 5 algorithms, consider the operating system is allocated with the CSCAN. So sometimes we may wish to update that particular algorithm with the SSTF, shortest seek time first. Then there may be a possibility, or there should be a possibility as in a separate model, so that we can do override in that particular situation. That is one of the thing we may observe, we may have a look into. And either SSTF or look is a reasonable choice for the default algorithm. Shortest seek time first or look algorithm. So out of these, any one can be selected as a default algorithm. But what about the rotational latency? What about the delay rotations after reaching the other side, other end, or after, say, consider a situation with the disk which is having 100 platters, 0 to 100, 0 to 99. So once it reaches 99th platter, then what will be the rotational or delay? That is very difficult to calculate. But again, it is very difficult because you're supposed to consider the file size, supposed to consider number of files as well. So it is very difficult to calculate for the operating system about the rotational latency, rotational delay. But what will be the sequence situation if you have a disk-based queuing effect based on operating system queue ordering efforts? So this ordering is nothing but, again, either we may follow ordering in the sense whether we keep all those files in ascending to descending order locations. On the other hand, we may say in general continuous memory location. So based on that, it has been identified that even latency, performance, queue, and starvation or delay, based on these kind of criteria, it can be identified. So in general, to conclude with this particular topic, selecting disk scheduling algorithm. So by default, according to the operating system, we may go with the SSTF or look. But if there is a need, if there is huge files, if there is number of contents in your disk, then we may go with SSTF also or CSCAN also. Moving further, so we have disk management. So in general, disk management, we may call it as low level formatting and high level. So if you divide in general format, how we can divide a disk into sectors that the disk and control can read and write. So in general, we'll take an example. Consider you are buying a new computers, say hard desktop machine. You are trying to assemble individually. So you are trying to buy your own choice of specifications. So you bought a 2 TB hard disk by SanDisk company. So now, once you bought that 2 TB hard disk, you're supposed to format while installing your OS operating system. So you're trying to format it. So there are different types of formatting available. You may go with the FTS, you may go with the FAT32, you may start with the NTFS, you may start with the Apple Mac, ATS kind of setup, right? So these are the different file formats available, file systems. So based on the operating system, we may select. So once we select that, we supposed to format. So while formatting, what do you mean by formatting, by the way? You are removing everything and you are creating a buffer space to manage with the metadata. There is in general definition with the formatting. So with respect to this physical formatting, we are trying to divide the disk into number of partitions. Each partition is nothing but groups of cylinders. So each cylinder may have number of platters. Each platter will have number of track and sectors. That is how the partition works. So now when we say low level formatting or physical formatting, it is nothing but dividing a disk into sectors that the disk controller can read and write. So physically, after the partition, after the grouping, partition is nothing but we are grouping. Say for example, the 2 TB can be divided into 500, 520 GB each with 4 partitions, C, D, E, F if it is a Windows mechanism. So C drive, D drive, E drive and F drive, 4 partitions we have. So each partition is nothing but it will have groups of cylinders. What the cylinder will have? Cylinder will have group of platters. What platter will have? Each platter will have its own track and sectors. So now low level formatting or physical formatting is nothing but we are dividing the particular disk into sectors. So these sectors can be controlled for read and write operation by the disk controller. So what it will have, the sectors, each sector can hold header information, data and CRC or error correction code ECC. This is for each individual sector. We supposed to know this particular thing. So each sector can have header information. Nothing but header information may include ID, position, address, all those, and data, actual data, and then CRC or error correction code ECC. In general, each sector may have up to 512 bytes of data. 512 bytes of data can be stored in each sector. That is in general, usual, a default set of values. So now to use a disk to hold files, the OS still needs to record its own data structures on the disk. So this is performed during partitioning. So partitioning is nothing but we are grouping one or more cylinders under one particular label. So each label is treated as logical disk. Say we said you bought a 2 TB hard disk. 2 TB hard disk can be divided into 520 GB each. So each 520 GB is treated as one separate logical disk, say in general drive. So that is how logical partitioning. So logical formatting on the other way can also say as making a file system. So to increase efficiency, most file systems group blocks into clusters. So each cluster will have different blocks. That is, blocks are nothing but for a disk IO operation. Based on the disk IO operation, we can allocate the block. And then file IO input output can be done on the clusters. File system on clusters, disk can be read by the blocks. So disk input output operation can be done on a blocks, file input output operation can be done on clusters. Then we may have a boot block. So this boot block, in the sense, whenever you load new operating system into your hard disk, at that time, at the end point, you're supposed to select a particular drive so that from that particular drive, the operating system must be loaded. So that is boot block. So the program is nothing but bootstrap program or bootloader program. So bootloader or bootstrap loader's task is to identify where exactly you loaded the operating system, and it will give a path to start from that particular position. So what do you mean by start? Nothing but whenever you switch on a machine from that particular C drive, your operating system should start to load. That is what this bootstrap's task is to. And we may have some methods such as sector sparing. It is used to handle bad blocks. So these bad blocks may occur during mishandling, or if there is a sudden power failure, there is a chance of having a sector sparing, that is bad blocks. So we'll consider a situation. Consider as an example for this one, for a bootstrap loader. So we'll see an example here. So here in this particular diagram, you can see an example. So booting from a disk in Windows 2000. So Windows 2000 is an operating system. So now our disk, the actual hard disk may be having 1, 2, 3, 4 partitions. 4 partitions we have in that particular disk, say C, D, E, and F. So now, so these partitions are available in that boot code and partition table. So this is the boot code and partition table is generated when you format your drive first. Entire disk format. I'm specifying that entire disk. So not only one particular drive, not only C drive, not only D drive, entire disk, entire disk. So after partitioning, you can see like this. So MBR will have the metadata information, that is boot recorder. So this MBR will have metadata and boot code with the partition table along with the path. Saying that you can load, say for example, you might have loaded partition in Windows 2000 in partition 3. So this particular path should be available in partition table, so that whenever we switch on the machine, the boot code should start loading based on the entry in the partition table, so that your operating system has been loaded. Okay. So now consider the situation. You have two operating system. You wanted to have two operating system in your machine. Consider one with the Windows 2000, another with the Linux. So you already have Windows in partition 3. Now, after some time, you thought of installing Unix or Linux operating system in your disk. So you thought of adding in partition 4. So in this partition 4, you are trying to install Linux operating system. So while installing this one again, so this particular MBR must be updated. Why? Because you have another operating system in this partition 4. So along with the boot code for Linux and corresponding partition table should be allocated in this MBR, so that while switching on your machine after installation, your bootstrap loader, so this one bootstrap loader program should open with the two choices, either Windows or to Linux operating system. So that particular list or table must be loaded from this MBR based on boot code. So based on your selection, either you may select Windows or you may select Linux. So that is the case, you should have another entry here. That is how bootstrap program or bootloader works. Hope you understood. So if you have any clarification, any doubts, please get back. Moving further, swap space management. So this swap space is nothing but virtual memory. So that is nothing but using or utilizing virtual memory in an emergency with the extension. So swap space is nothing but virtual memory uses disk space as an extension of main memory. If there is a need in emergency, then it will make use of that particular swap space. Space can be utilized along with the virtual memory if there is a need for an extension of main memory. So consider a situation as an example. Say you have 2 GB of RAM main memory, you have 1 TB of hard disk. So sometimes during a particular operation, you may facing slow operation, very slow operation with respect to that particular application. Seeing that the virtual memory is full, it may be asking for another some space. So at that time, you can make use of this particular concept, swap space. For an emergency, you may ask some amount of memory as an extension to main memory, so that you can utilize the full capacity of virtual memory. So now this is very common nowadays, because of we are getting, it is very less common, because we have already familiar with high capacity hard disks. So nowadays we are not facing this particular situation, swap space, because we already come up with the large sized hard disks. Now swap space can be carved out of normal file system, or more commonly we can say in a separate disk partition, say raw partition. How to do that? Swap space management. Consider a 4.BSD allocates swap space. Nothing but is supposed to execute more than two processes simultaneously. Swap space when process starts. So it will hold the text segment and data segment. So for this particular setup, please recall our microprocessor lab programs or microprocessor programming. So in that we are dividing segment registers and other registers. So the segment registers are nothing but part of the program. We have text segment, data segment, code segment, and extra segment. Text segment will hold all the data which is related with the program. Data segment will hold all the data which is related with that particular program. Extra segment will hold some of the additional spaces, and code segment will hold the actual code of the program, assembly level program. So now whenever there is a need, the code segment or text segment may allocate from the extra segment part so that it can be utilized. So that is swap space. Whenever we need, we may use that extra segment part, and whenever we done with our execution, we may leave, we may free that particular memory space. So that is swap space management for you. And kernel uses swap maps to track swap space use. So kernel keeps track of all these swaps. So whenever a particular program needs extra memory, so it will make entry in that swap map, and then it can utilize. So once it is done, it's supposed to return back the particular swap space. So in general, Solaris 2 machine allocates swap space only when a dirty page is forced out of physical memory. So when there is no physical memory, then there is a chance of having swap space in Solaris 2. That is when a dirty page is forced, saying that there is no memory to keep track of physical memory. Right. So that is how when Solaris 2 is allocates swap space. How it works? So file data return to swap space until write to file system is requested. Till you save the program, till you save the result, till then, so this virtual memory can have your data. So only when you press save button, then only it will save to file system. So till that, for that particular duration, if there is a need of virtual memory, then it may accept some part of disk as the part of virtual memory. So that is swapping, collecting few more space. So saying that other dirty pages go to swap space due to no other home. There is no space in between. So what happens in the back end? Text segment pages thrown out and reread from the file system as needed. Whenever there is a need, it's supposed to read from that particular file system. So now we have a two situation. So one situation is, what if a system runs out of swap space? We know what happens when we run out of virtual memory. What will happen if we run out of swap space also? Then there may be a delay. There may be starvation in the head reading or writing or IO operations. But we are not facing right now in the market. We are getting for a lesser price. We are getting a large sized hard disk. For a lesser price, we are getting a large sized main memory also, RAM. That's why. So this is almost outdated now. And some of the machines, some systems allow multiple swap spaces, not only single, multiple swap spaces also allowed. So that is the completion of first part of storage structure. So if you have any doubts, please get back. So we'll see an example if you need. So here say partitioning, swap partition. Consider situation, swap area. This entire length as a swap area, treated as swap area. So each swap area can be divided into pages. Each will have page slot. So now, according to the definition, it's supposed to manage with the swap map. Kernel supposed to map with the, please follow my cursor together. Kernel supposed to maintain with the swap map. This swap map will track with the swap space use. So now, for each swap map, it's supposed to keep track of this. So during some execution, consider this particular partition may be utilized. So that's why it's supposed to make entry in this one, so that this particular partition might have been used. Similarly, 0, that is no use of this one. 3, this particular area has been utilized. This is how swapping can takes place in Linux kernel. So once it is used, once it is done with the save, once it is done with all your operations are saved, then it's supposed to release. So till then, till that particular period usage, the swap maps have to keep track of all this swap area. information in this map table. Okay, thank you. So any other clarification, please get back to me.